3 weeks of grueling campaign have come to an end. The battle lines are clear. 288 seats in Maharashtra, 90 in Haryana. Welcome to the news tonight. I'm Zaka Jacob. Up first, the headlines that we're tracking tonight. On a day when campaigning came to an end in Maharashtra and Haryana, there's controversy over Narendra Modi's speech at Madison Square Garden taking centre stage yet again. Andhra Pradesh takes stock of the damage left behind by Cyclone Hoodhood in Visakhapatnam, while Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh get ready for heavy rains and winds. It's Diwali cheer for the consumer. Retail inflation for the month of September drops to 6.46 on the back of falling prices of fruits and vegetables. The Congress removes Shashi Tharoor as party spokesperson. The MP from Thiruvananthapuram says he accepts the decision, but he should have been given a chance to present his side of the story first. And Occupy Hong Kong protests take a violent turn. Pro-democracy protesters clash with the police after the cops forcibly remove barricades. And our top story tonight. Campaigning ended in Maharashtra and Haryana this evening after a final flourish. There were a flurry of political rallies and roadshows by all parties. Prime Minister Narendra Modi wrapping up the BJP's campaign with 3 rallies in Palghar, Ratnagiri and Sindhudurg in Maharashtra. He asked voters of Maharashtra to bring in a BJP government on its own strength to ensure that the state benefits from the BJP rule at the centre. In Haryana, Home Minister Rajnath Singh and Chief Minister Bhupinder Singh Hooda were the high-profile campaigners. Voting will take place this Wednesday, the 15th of October. Results will be declared this Sunday, the 19th. So Maharashtra is the big battle, both in terms of prestige as well as number of seats. For the first time in more than 2 decades, all parties, or at least the major ones, are contesting this election on their own strength. Sunil Chawake is a political analyst. He's senior assistant editor with Maharashtra Times. He's now joining us live on the news tonight. Thanks for speaking with us here on the program. Just put this election into perspective for our viewers. It's the first time that you're seeing individual parties fight this election on their own strength, whether it's the Shiv Sena, the BJP, the MNS, the Congress and the NCP. Walk us through what are the big issues that have dominated in this particular campaign cycle, and how do you see this play out come election day?
This is a historical election in Maharashtra. Since last 50 years, never before 5 parties contesting independently, and this year's contest is about to culminate into which way it will go, one can't say, but it is advantage BJP right now, because every party is fighting against BJP, and every party, whether it is Congress, NCP, Shiv Sena, MNS or BSP, they are all fighting against BJP, and that is why BJP has become a pole in this election. And as far as issues are concerned, there are several issues. 15 years of anti-incumbency and corruption against incumbent Congress NCP government, and misrule of 15 years and there is a generational change in this election we are witnessing. All the old leaders, they are almost on the verge of getting retired by virtue of getting defeated, or by not getting back into the power.
Okay.
And new generation is coming up, like Devendra Fadnavis, Supriya Sule, Pankaja Munde, Aditya Thackeray. Everywhere new generation you can see.
Okay, so it's a generational shift in this particular election. Also, I want to come back to Mr. Chawake in just a moment. This is also, like he said, the BJP has now become the centerpiece of this particular election. All parties are attacking the BJP, and that's given reason for all the regional parties of Maharashtra to come together. NCP chief Sharad Pawar adding a last-minute drama to this campaign by praising Shiv Sena President Uddhav Thackeray for what he says working hard to strengthen the Shiv Sena after the demise of his father and party founder Bal Thackeray. Now, this is what Mr. Pawar said. Uddhav has proven everybody wrong by holding the party together after his father died. Mr. Pawar also praised Uddhav as a very hard-working leader. The praise for the Sena chief comes in the backdrop of speculation about possible realignment of political parties after the polls. Replying to journalists' questions, Mr. Pawar, though, disagreed that the massive mandate in favor of the BJP under Narendra Modi in the recent Lok Sabha elections pose any kind of threat to regional parties. We're still in conversation with Mr. Sunil Chawake from the Maharashtra Times. Is this one of the big rearrangements that's going to happen in the Maharashtra polls once this election concludes, once the results are in? Yes, all parties are fighting on their individual strength, but once the results are in, and if it's going to be a fractured mandate, then no political party is antithetical to the other. We could see possibilities of Raj Thackeray and Uddhav Thackeray come together. We could see possibilities of the NCP and the BJP come together. Possibly even all three Maharashtra parties, the NCP, the Sena and the MNS come together. Even the Sena and BJP burying hatchet and coming back together. How do you reckon that's going to play out, this possible realignment in Maharashtra politics once the results are in?
There are four possibilities broadly, and three of them with BJP, because BJP can align with Shiv Sena, it can align with NCP, or it can align with Maharashtra Navnirman Sena and independents.
Okay.
And other fourth possibility is NCP, Shiv Sena and MNS coming together and forming the government. But that the fourth one is quite you can say non-existent, because NCP being in power for 15 years and facing anti-incumbency is unlikely to win as many seats, and Shiv Sena winning not more than 50 or 60, it will be very difficult to cobble up the numbers to form the government and keep BJP out. So right now I think BJP is in win-win position.
Okay.
After the results coming in, it can form with any combination, but BJP will be the force to reckon with.
Just to add a sense of perspective to that, in the current assembly, the BJP has 46 or 47 MLAs. So if they are to come anywhere close to forming the next government in Maharashtra on their own, they have to add something like 100 seats. If they manage to do that, and nobody's saying it's not impossible, but if they do manage to do that, that would be a record in itself in the history of Maharashtra elections. Thanks for joining us, Sunil Chawake from the Maharashtra Times, with his thoughts and perspective and opinion into how this election, this campaign at least in Maharashtra, has played out so far. Interesting days ahead. The next couple of important days to watch out for: Wednesday, when the election happens, and Sunday, when the results will be out. And even as the campaign wound down, there was another controversy at the very last minute. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's speech, which he made recently in New York at Madison Square Garden, is being aired repeatedly as a BJP ad on local channels in Maharashtra. Now, the Congress has complained to the Election Commission about this. It's accused the BJP of misusing Modi's speech, which was given during an official tour in his capacity as the country's Prime Minister.
Congress has lodged a complaint with the Election Commission against BJP over telecast of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Madison Garden Square speech in the United States. The speech has been run by TV channels in Maharashtra on Sunday as well as on Monday, the last days of campaigning. The party alleged BJP has violated paid news norms ahead of the 15th October polls. BJP had put out newspaper ads urging people to catch the telecast of what they call the speech that's creating waves across the world. Election rules allow ad spots if the channel makes it clear that it is promotional. Congress has asked the Election Commission to take a view on the complaint that the telecast amounted to paid news. However, BJP counters that the Madison Square Garden event was a private function and it is within its rights to use past speeches of its star campaigner. Earlier, Congress had objected to Modi's radio broadcast during the campaign season. But the Election Commission had ruled that it did not violate Model Code of Conduct. Bureau Report, Rajya TV.
We're going to take a break here on the news tonight. When we return, we take you back to the line of control, and there's been yet another violation by Pakistan after a brief lull. Today, a 30-year-old woman was injured in a fresh burst of firing along the LOC. We'll get you details when the News Tonight returns. Welcome back. You're watching the News Tonight. Now, the port city of Visakhapatnam is slowly trying to return to normal a day after Cyclone Hoodhood hammered the city on Sunday. Hoodhood is now presently moving inland, bringing rains to Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, Telangana, South Madhya Pradesh, Bihar as well as Jharkhand. Wind speeds have also significantly decreased, but right now, residents in Visakhapatnam are trying to cope with the shortage of drinking water as well as other essential commodities.
A day after braving Cyclone Hoodhood, Visakhapatnam residents were up against a severe shortage of food and fuel on Monday.
Due to this cyclone, there is not having any petrol, diesel, and food. There is having a lot of food crisis.
The number of trees have been uprooted, mangled, as well as electric pole and telephone poles have been fallen. So we are restoring the road communication. That is our number one priority. Then we are focusing on the utility buildings.
The storm left in its wake fallen trees, damaged homes, and broken communication links in the city. 7 people were killed. Many passengers were still waiting at railway stations for train services to resume on Monday morning.
परसों रात को 1:30 बजे से यहीं पे हैं। ये प्राकृतिक जो दुर्योग है इसके लिए चक्कर में मतलब फंस गए हैं हम लोग आके यहाँ।
In neighbouring Odisha, people were relieved that the cyclone lost much of its intensity by the time it hit the state.
जिस तरह का माहौल था वो तो टल गया, अभी फिलहाल सही सलामत सब ठीक है।
The cyclone weakened into a deep depression and has moved on to Chhattisgarh and Madhya Pradesh. Jharkhand witnessed heavy rains.
Today morning also it has further weakened into deep depression and lay centered about 90 km northwest of Jagdalpur and 190 km south of Raipur. The system will move north-northwestwards, weaken into depression in a subsequent 3 to 6 hours.
In the massive evacuation operation, more than 150,000 people were shifted. The effort was comparable to the exercise undertaken during cyclone Felling last year that caused 53 deaths. Fishermen were cautioned not to venture out into the sea on Monday. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Meanwhile, there's some good news on the consumer front, and that too just a few days ahead of Diwali. Retail inflation declined for a second straight month in September, dropping below the 7% mark, and the last time that happened was more than 2.5 years ago. The figure is 6.4%. It's the lowest since January of 2012. In August, retail prices had risen 7.73% year on year. Core inflation has also come down to 5.9% compared to 6.9% in August. The RBI, though, is widely expected to keep interest rates on hold until at least the first quarter of the next fiscal. Its concern is that risks linked to deficient monsoon rains, as well as growing geopolitical tensions, particularly in West Asia, could drive up oil prices, and that could significantly push up the whole inflation basket. The RBI had sent a strong signal last month that it would hold off cutting interest rates until it was entirely confident that consumer inflation can be reduced to 6% by January of 2016. Now, on a day when loudspeakers fell silent both in Maharashtra and Haryana after weeks of intense campaigning, the Indo-Pak border too witnessed a rather uneasy calm. Decibel levels peaked, though, in the blame game over who violated the ceasefire first.
Pakistani guns remained quiet along the 192-kilometer-long international border on Monday, but the government once again asked Indian forces to be on alert and retaliate strongly to provocations.
Government will appropriately respond as and when the situation demands.
In Jammu and Karachi, political parties led protests against the cross-border shelling. Both sides blamed rival nations for targeting civilians in their attacks.
Unfortunately, the people who die on the borders, whether it's a Sipahi from our side or that side, he's a poor man, or the people who live on the borders.
Indian security experts and political leaders also criticized Pakistan for escalating the border tensions in order to internationalize the Kashmir issue.
भारत ने कभी भी अपने इतिहास में किसी दुनिया के दूसरे देश पर कब्जा करने की अथवा आक्रमण करने की कोशिश नहीं की। हम वही अपना चरित्र बनाकर रखना चाहते हैं। लेकिन अब चलाई गोली उन लोगों ने या हमारे लोगों ने उसका जवाब दिया, तब पाकिस्तान संयुक्त राष्ट्र संघ में जाकर कह रहा है बचाओ बचाओ बचाओ। हालात ऐसे पैदा हो।
Pakistan has been trying to internationalize the issue time and again in the UN recently, Nawaz Sharif's speech, and now by this letter. It seems they don't know the lessons of history. It seems they don't learn the lessons of history, and it shows a desperation in Pakistan about the fact that the country is disintegrating.
From the figures that they have given in their letter to UN Secretary General, if there are 0 casualties amongst Pakistani soldiers, then obviously they are the aggressors.
On Sunday, Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif's political advisor Sartaj Aziz wrote to the United Nations chief Ban Ki-moon accusing India of deliberately violating the ceasefire agreement. He also appealed to the UN to intervene and resolve the Kashmir issue. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So the politics is still loud. The guns may have fallen silent. Also silenced today was the Congress's MP Shashi Tharoor, who's been removed as the party's spokesperson. The action coming just days after Mr. Tharoor praised Prime Minister Modi for his Clean India initiative, a remark that didn't exactly go down well with the Kerala Congress. Even though Mr. Tharoor accepted the decision as a loyal worker of the Congress party, he claimed he did not get a chance to put his views across. The BJP saw this as a chance to attack the Congress, suggesting that the step reflects intolerance within the grand old party. Market regulator Sebi has barred real estate behemoth DLF and its 6 top executives, including Chairman MP Singh, from the securities markets for at least 3 years. Now, this is after the company was found guilty of active as well as deliberate suppression of material information at the time of its initial public offer. Now, Sebi has also prohibited KP Singh's son, Rajiv Singh, who's the vice chairman, and daughter Pia Singh, whole-time director, from taking any part in the equities markets. In its order, the regulator said the violations were grave. It has larger implications on the safety and integrity of the markets. The company and its top executives are found to have violated various regulations, including Sebi's disclosure and investor protection guidelines, as well as the prevention of fraudulent and unfair trade practices. Time now to get you all the other national news in Nationwide. A special court has rejected the CBI's closure report in the coal scam. It's also summoned former Coal Secretary H.C. Gupta, 2 other government officials, as well as a Madhya Pradesh-based power company. The court took cognizance of the offences of criminal conspiracy, as well as cheating and criminal breach of trust under the IPC and the Prevention of Corruption Act. The Supreme Court will hear former Tamil Nadu Chief Minister J. Jayalalitha's bail plea on Friday. The former Chief Minister was handed down a 4-year prison term as well as a fine of 100 crore rupees in a disproportionate assets case. She's currently lodged in a jail in Bangalore. The countdown has begun for the 3rd Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System. The satellite system, which is over 1,400 kilos in weight, will be launched on the 16th of October. The IRNSS is designed to provide accurate location and timing to standard positioning service users here in the country. It is similar in many ways to America's GPS techniques that provide location and time details accurately. Time for another break here on the news tonight. When we return, all the other international stories, including a violent turn in the Occupy Hong Kong protests as police and protesters clash for the very first time. Those stories and more when the news tonight returns. Welcome back to the news tonight. Time now to focus on all the international stories. Occupy Hong Kong has taken a violent turn. Pro-democracy protesters clashed with the police after they forcibly dismantled some of the barricades that were erected by the activists. Now, this led to a scuffle as well as lots of pushing and shoving. Eventually, the police even took some protesters into custody.
It had to happen sooner or later. Protesters and police clashing in the 3rd week of Occupy Hong Kong. The protesters accused the police of using force to remove barricades that they had set up. Some protesters were even forcibly taken away. Soon, things got out of hand with some of the protesters chanting slogans and pushing the police to the back of the road.
We want to set the ball here, but the police come and start fighting. Yeah, and still right now. Yeah, just totally.
The Hong Kong police say they decided to remove the barricades after it became a hindrance to workers, especially government employees who had to go past them to get to work.
The protesters have enough space to make their voices already. Continued occupation of the roads creates nuisance and is completely unreasonable. Police have to remove these obstacles so that traffic can at least partially resume.
Across in the mainland, the Chinese Foreign Ministry defended the Hong Kong police's decision to forcibly remove the barriers.
我们的立场是，占中行动完全是非法活动，我们支持特区政府依法来予以处理。
These protesters have been camped out for 3 weeks straight now. The protests have been largely peaceful, but that could soon change in the next few days. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
So the first hint of violence there in over 3 weeks of Occupy Hong Kong. This could possibly change the course of these protests. Let's talk about the other big international story that we've been tracking over the last few weeks, if not months. There's now a third suspected case of Ebola in the United States. So much so, President Barack Obama himself is keeping a close watch on the measures that are being taken to prevent the spread of this virus. Officials are now reporting a breach in protocol after a healthcare worker in Dallas became the second person to be diagnosed with this disease. Another patient has also been diagnosed with possible symptoms in Massachusetts.
Doctors in Texas are keeping a close watch on the second Ebola patient in the country, a health worker who contracted the virus while taking care of the first victim. The patient's identity has not been revealed. Doctors are monitoring her temperature and have placed her in isolation.
I live right next door to the person who contracted Ebola. And yeah, I mean, I'm freaked out, but I guess I'm not super scared.
Medics in Massachusetts are also keeping a close watch on a third man, although there is no confirmation that he's infected.
We are evaluating other potential healthcare worker exposures because if this individual was exposed, which they were, it is possible that other individuals were exposed.
Meanwhile, the condition of the Spanish nurse who contracted Ebola after treating 2 infected priests is stable. As the epidemic spreads in West Africa, Liberian health officials are appealing to nurses and medical assistants not to go ahead with a national strike. The National Health Workers Association is demanding an increase in the monthly risk fee paid to those treating Ebola patients. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Now, in a bid to counter the Islamic State, Turkey has agreed to allow moderate Syrian rebels to be trained on its soil. Now, this has also agreed to let the United States use Turkish bases in the fight against the terror outfit. The US-led coalition has for several weeks now been carrying out airstrikes against the IS militants who've seized large parts of Iraq as well as Syria. Kurdish forces, meanwhile, are continuing their battle against IS. The Syrian border town of Kobani is turning out to be the big flashpoint in this fight. An amateur video purportedly shows the two sides engaged in street fights. The crisis in Kobani has sparked protests among the Kurds. They are unhappy with the Turkish government for refusing to approve the use of military force to assist Kurdish fighters.
We have not asked for the Turks to send ground forces of their own into Syria. Our interest is in the following. First of all, the Turks have, just in the last several days, made a commitment that they will, in the first instance, allow the United States and our partners to use Turkish bases and territory to train these moderate Syrian opposition forces. So that is a new commitment. They have now joined Saudi Arabia in giving the go-ahead for that important contribution.
Now let's get you more international stories in Global Buzz. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon arrived in the West Bank capital of Ramallah on Monday for a 2-day visit. He's scheduled to meet with Israeli as well as Palestinian leaders for possible renewal of peace talks as well as to discuss the efforts of reconstruction in the Gaza Strip. At least 30 people were injured after Typhoon Wongfong hit Japan's southern islands Monday. The storm made landfall at Kyushu Island at about 8:30 in the morning. More than 30 flights were cancelled. Thousands have been evacuated. Wangfong could pass over Tokyo as early as Tuesday. The French economist Jean Tirole has won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on market power and regulation. The prize, officially called the Sveriges Riksbank Prize in Economic Sciences, was established back in 1968. Mr. Tirole will receive 8 million Swedish crowns as prize money. Some sports stories now. In Olympic star Oscar Pistorius appeared at the sentence hearing in Pretoria Monday. His psychologist argued that the athlete was traumatized beyond recovery. A social worker and witness said that Pistorius should be sentenced to at least 3 years of correctional supervision. Now that amounts to 3 years of house arrest and community service. Pistorius was convicted a few weeks ago for the murder of his girlfriend Reva Steenkamp. He faces a potential sentence of up to 15 years in jail.
It is foreseen that Mr. Pistorius will require intensive and ongoing psychotherapy. What we are left with, my lady, we are left with a broken man who has lost everything.
The accused appears to be a cooperative person whose offending behavior could be managed and modified within the community context through the application of strict conditions prevalent within correctional supervision.
More sports stories coming up in Sports Beat. The Supreme Court today refused to pass any order restraining BCCI chief N. Srinivasan from taking part in the BCCI's annual general meeting. The court also refused to interfere in the BCCI's decision to extend the current term of Mr. Srinivasan beyond the 30th of September. The ICC released its new list of one-day rankings Monday. India lost the top spot to Australia because of the cancellation of their third one-dayer against the West Indies in Vishakhapatnam because of Cyclone Hoodhood. Indian shuttler Ajay Jairam won the Dutch Open Grand Prix title, beating his Indonesian opponent Ehsan Maulana Mustafa in 5 games. Ajay became the first Indian to win the Badminton Grand Prix under the new 11x5 scoring system. In football, England managed a 1-0 win against Estonia in the Euro 2016 qualifier match. Wayne Rooney's free kick in the 73rd minute securing the win for England. Estonia were reduced to 10 men early in the second half, but Roy Hodgson's men couldn't capitalise on that advantage. And that, I'm afraid, is a wrap of the news tonight, this Monday edition. Thank you for your time. From me, Zaka Jacob, and the rest of the team. We'll catch you again tomorrow, same time. Good night.